Hey friends!
So today we're going to talk about differences between Savage Worlds Deluxe Explorers Edition versus the new Savage Worlds Adventures Edition. I've been playing the Deluxe Explorers Edition for years, probably since like 2012. That's right, that was before you were born. And love it. It's been my favorite RPG. The Adventures Edition got this box set. One thing about the box set, it didn't actually come with the core rulebook. It came with everything under the sun, the GM's guide, all kinds of action decks, bennies, etc. It did not come with the book. I had to buy a digital copy of the book because it is hard to get right now. But as of late, we have been playing the deluxe edition more anyway. I'm going to go through 5 rules that I like better in the Deluxe Explorers Edition. Would love to hear your thoughts. Maybe some of you have some reasons as to why those rule changes are in there. But for me, some of them just don't make sense, and I downright don't like a few of them. So one of the first differences that I'm a little bit on the fence about is some of the skill changes. I do love the idea of having the 5 skills: athletics, common knowledge, notice, stealth, and persuasion all starting off as a D4. To me, that does make sense. I think what I don't like is some of the skills that got rolled up into other skills. In some cases, they make sense. In some cases, I have some mixed feelings. In some cases, they don't make sense to me at all. So just to kind of start off, you've got climbing, throwing, and swimming, which have now all been rolled into athletics. At a quick glance, this makes sense, but I think especially with throwing is the one that kind of gets me. You could have somebody that's good at throwing, that's like a D10 in throwing, that is not athletic at all. Look at the MLB American League for perfect examples of this all around. Lots of 300-pound pitchers that are anything but athletic. National League, a little bit different. But for those of you that aren't baseball fans, think of several comic book characters that are skilled with just throwing knives. That doesn't necessarily make them athletic, and this is where I kind of have an issue with throwing being wrapped up into athletics. For me, I'm going to continue to use throwing in games that I play as a separate skill. Some of the other ones, investigation to research, I don't know. To me, the two feel a little bit different. I'm thinking of researching, going to a library, investigating, looking for fingerprints. So I'm not sure if they're a perfect match, but again, these are small changes. One question I have about skills is what in the world happened to Streetwise? That is one that should also be in there. I can't imagine playing Savage Worlds without Streetwise. Perhaps this is just the way that I play. Usually I go with like a rogue-like character and, a scoundrel, if you will. To not have Streetwise just makes no sense. Tracking into survival, I think that's probably fair. Lock-picking into thievery. You could make the argument that just to be good at picking locks, you don't have to be good at be a thief all around. I will say I understand what they were going for in limiting these skills. Some of them work, and I like the idea of keeping it simple, but in particular, the ones I'm going to push back on are throwing and streetwise. I believe they need to be separated out in their own thing. Also, as I mentioned, investigation and research. We'll see if I continue to use that in games that I GM as a separate skill. So a second major change going from the Deluxe Explorers Edition to Suede, the Adventurers Edition, is the rules around Shaken. I was kind of shocked a couple of weeks ago just to kind of discover that these rules had changed. It's been the same in all past editions of Savage Worlds. So essentially the rules around Shaken now are if you roll Spirit on a success, you're automatically unshaken and can act. What it's always been in the past is on your turn, if you're shaken, you roll your Spirit. If you get a success, you're unshaken but can't act this turn. In order to act this turn, you need a success with a raise. So at first, I didn't care for this rule. I think it's just something that was totally foreign, a foreign concept to me, and I didn't like it. It is starting to grow on me, however. I think this is something where I will, going forward, use the Adventurer's rules when playing. I do like this. It does kind of simplify things. I feel like in certain situations, it actually makes a lot more sense. So this is one where my mind has been changed a little bit, but still I thought it was something I would point out because everybody might not be on board with this, especially longtime Savage Worlds players. So this third item I'm going to mention is one I absolutely cannot stand. To me, it's kind of a non-starter. But in past versions of Savage Worlds, you had optional extreme setting rules, right? Like extra gritty or that kind of thing. One of them was called Joker's Wild. And basically, Joker's Wild gave all the players a Benny or the GM a Benny when he got a Joker, an extra one. I can't stand this rule, and it's something that amazingly somehow they have incorporated into the standard Adventurers Edition. One problem, probably the only problem, I mean, not to knock any GM or anything like that, but one problem I had with the Savage World session I played in a few weeks ago was the bennies were just too free flowing. I'm not a huge fan of that in general. It kind of takes away from the lucky or unlucky edge for one thing. Makes it not matter so much. It also draws out the game. The way we have always played, and this probably stems going back from Deadlands, is you've got 3 bennies. It's 3 possible rerolls. For any that you keep and have at the end of the game, you get an extra experience point towards leveling up. So there's kind of incentive not to use those. It's only something that you use in dire straits, and you kind of protect that resource. Kind of now with this concept of Joker's Wild and just the push in general to pass out bennies, it's something that slows down the game, so it's no longer fast, furious, and fun. And it's something that just doesn't make sense, takes away from other edges, and randomly rewards players for no good reason. Out of all the rule changes, this is my least favorite. Not a fan of the Joker's Wild mechanic being rolled into the standard game. For those of you that don't understand what that means, again, this is on initiative when the action deck is passing out cards for initiative. If you get a Joker, if one of the playing characters gets a Joker, all the playing characters get an extra Benny. As a GM myself, to give somebody an extra Benny, they have to do something extraordinary. I don't kind of like the push to incentivize with the bennies and rerolls. It just hampers the game. So the fourth item I'm going to touch on are changes to edges and hindrances. At the end of the day, they cleaned up some of the edges that were OP or broken and did some nice things with those. What I really dislike, I guess, though, is the removal of so many edges and hindrances without backfilling them. Now, as I mentioned towards the beginning of this video, as a GM, feel free to add edges and hindrances from whatever setting or rulebook you'd like. So this is something you could totally get around. I guess it's just for new players, they're not going to know that these options ever even existed because they're not available. And some of them were kind of neat. So specifically, the Adept, Florentine, Leader of Men, Martial Arts Master, Noble, and Quick Draw edges were removed. In terms of hindrances, the lame and one leg hindrances were removed and clumsy was added. Now, one thing about this, I mean, it's not like those 2 hindrances are going to be used that often. I did have somebody use the one leg hindrance one time, creating a pirate-like character, and it does make sense as a major hindrance. I mean, it really is going to slow a character down, and it allowed them to role-play a character, and it really kind of is a perfect major hindrance. The fifth item I've got is changes to combat. So some of this is not that big a deal, and a couple of things needed to change. I love the test versus tricks mechanic. I did have several munchkins abuse that tricks mechanic all the time, or at least attempt to. So the way they kind of clarify that with tests and tricks, that's actually perfect. One thing I don't like is readying up to 2 weapons is now a free action. It does not make sense, especially in something like Deadlands. I think that you should either have to have that as an edge or it should take you an action to get ready. For raises in damage in particular, now this is something going back where there was some dispute about, and I think they just kind of clarified it. And I don't like the way that they clarified it. So one way that we have always played is if you have multiple raises on an attack, you get multiple extra damage dice rolls. It kind of makes that super successful attack actually mean something. In this, it's limited to 1 extra damage dice, so you could have 10 raises, and still it's only 1 extra damage dice on the damage roll. It just doesn't really make sense. So that is something I'm not a huge fan of. That was more of a clarification in the new mechanics that people kind of argued was the way it should work in Deluxe. So again, understand everybody's got different opinions. Would love to hear people's thoughts. What did you like about Savage Worlds Adventures Edition versus Deluxe Edition, or vice versa? For me, some of these are growing on me. Like I said, the shaken mechanic actually makes a lot of sense now that I've taken a step back and thought about it. Some of the other changes will never make sense to me. I can't imagine not having a throwing skill in certain settings. Can't imagine ever playing with the Joker's Wild rule as standard. As I said, not a huge fan of free-flowing bennies. But to each their own, and I understand some people like some of these changes and some people don't. Skills, edges, and hindrances in Savage Worlds, really at the end of the day, you're free to add and detract those as you see fit. I just found some of these changes interesting and a few of them kind of shocking. Any way you look at it, Savage Worlds is still my favorite system. There's a few of these rules from Suede that I just will not run with, but we will continue to play Savage Worlds, and as we speak, we're playing a Pathfinder Savage Worlds adventure right now. That's all for this video. Hopefully after the March tournament, we're looking at actually doing a Savage Worlds Pathfinder tournament. Let me know your thoughts on that as well. Until next time, thanks so much for watching.